Welcome to another edition of The Power of Words, The Winner's Mentality, with me, your host, Kevin Treasure, Pastor Kevin Treasure, aka The Winner's Mentality, helping you win with your words. And we've got a special month this month, interrupting usual encouragement in regards to the power of words and the way we live our life, bringing about awareness, because this is national, or I believe is international, International Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're trying to bring awareness about the horrors of domestic violence, which is happening. It's not just a national thing, it's happening England, Europe, America, Africa, Asia, all over the world. Women are suffering in the hands of violent, insecure, narcissistic, evil men that think it's alright to put their hands on women, and it is not alright. And I'm helping bring awareness to this, launching a big project very soon in regards to domestic violence. And because it's Domestic Violence Month, I'm here just bringing stories and bringing awareness, trying to provoke people's awareness of what's taking place in the lives of many women and what many women are facing all over the world. And I'm just bringing individual stories, not giving out the real names, but bringing individual stories. And you may say, hey, winner's mentality, why are you so passionate about this? Well, because of things that I've seen when I was young, and many of you may or may not know, I was a 999 police operator for a long time. So I was a first respondent, so I got the calls to the crimes that are coming in, the calls to where the police had to be dispatched, police ambulance had to be dispatched, and some stories I heard were pretty horrifying. Some of them I would not repeat. But over the years, I've seen a growing number of domestic violence calls, and domestic violence is not just, it's not just for one particular culture or ethnic minority or race of people. It's across the board: black, white, Indian, Chinese, rich or poor, tall or short. Listen, it's everybody, all sectors of society have been affected by domestic violence, and I see a pattern. All these years I've seen a pattern, so I'm just bringing about stories. Some of them, most of them true, many of them I've just disguised the names, bringing awareness. I want people to know that this is going on and it needs to stop. There are many organizations, and if you look in the description part of this video, comments part, there are some domestic violence organizations, numbers and contacts, that please, if you are facing domestic violence, please do not suffer in silence. Please let the police know. Please let organizations know. Get the help that you need. Step out of this bubble of fear that the partner has put you in, and know that there is help out there, and there are people willing to help you all the way to get you out of the situation you're in. But today we're talking about Natasha's story. And Natasha, like I said, that is a made-up name. That's a pseudonym. It's a made-up name. I'm just plugging in some, making sure we're good to go. That's a made-up name, and Natasha's story may be identical to your story or stories of people that you may know. But Natasha's story goes like this. Natasha was a young lady in her 20s, and she had been with her partner since she was about 19, and she'd been together about 4 or 5 years. They had a young child together in the first 2 years, and things were going okay. But when the child was little, something started to happen, and she started to notice some changes in the behavior of her partner. And the real big change came when he lost his job. And let's just call him Eric for now. And Eric lost his job, and he had a very good job and he had a very good income. And because of certain things, he couldn't actually get back in that line of work. Line of work was scarce. And he started drinking, and not only did he start drinking, he started smoking. And she started noticing the differences in him. He started going out later, coming home later, and because he's got nothing to wake up to, he'd go out late, wake up late, lie around. And then it was quite clear that he was suffering some sort of depression. But the only problem with this depression is that he started taking it out on her, and he started taking it out on Natasha, and he started finding things to blame her of things that she wasn't responsible for. And then he kept blaming her, and he kept getting angry, and she noticed that he kept getting angry all the time. Before it was just like every week, and now she realized that it's every other day, and then every day he's just always angry and always shouting. And it's obviously that he's frustrated, and he's frustrated with his life, frustrated with the way that he hasn't got a job, and frustrated with the way his life is turned out at that time. But he started to take out on Natasha, And it first started with a slap, and then he'd apologize very quickly and say, I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me. And because they've been together for such a long time, and she knows that he's going through a bit of depression, and then he started to slap her again, and she started noticing a pattern, but he'd be quick to apologize, and then he started to slap her and then he'd puncture, and then it became a bit more intense. And unfortunately, and there were times that she'd start to wear dark glasses, and people saw the change in her, but she felt ashamed to tell her parents and her family, because she didn't want her family to start looking at Eric any differently, because they'd always known him as a very nice guy. And it got to a point where she decided to confide in a friend, and a friend tried to encourage her that, listen, you got to get help, you got to protect yourself, because obviously you've got a young child, the child is seeing what's going on, and that's going to affect the child, and more importantly, it's affecting you, and you're not somebody's human punch bag. But she said, let's just give him some time. And she tried to talk to Eric when he was sober, and when he was sober he was fine, but that wasn't very often. And when he'd sober, he'd apologize and cry and say, well, I don't know what's going on with me. But when he started drinking, and when he came down off the drink, that's when the violence would start. And she finally plucked up the courage to say enough is enough, and she called the police, and the police came and they saw the bruises, and he eventually got arrested, and he was told to stay away from the house until the case went forward. But during that case, he broke the bail conditions by calling her and telling how sorry he was, and let's try and make this up, and he can't live without her, and he pleaded with her to take him back. And she really wanted to drop the charges, and she went to the officer in charge of the case asking for the charges to be dropped, but they said the case had gone too far. But she allowed him back in the house because she felt sorry for him, and this was, after all, the father of her child. And she let him back in the house, and the first week was fine, and the second week was fine, but after the third week he just developed the same habit, and he started hitting her again. But this time it became more serious, and not only were the police called again, the social services were called because the child was there. And unfortunately, because of her, the social services actually said to her that, in fact, you're taking this man back is actually endangering the child, and now we're going to have to start looking at ways to protect the child, because they see it as you're not protecting the child by taking back an abusive partner. So she told him because of this second attack, she would not take him back, but it was already too late because the investigation was on the way. But at the same time, the pattern started. After she had kicked him out and after he left, he kept calling her and saying, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. And because he was very persuasive, and because he tugged at her heartstrings, she took him back for the third time. And just like the second time, he was fine for the first few weeks, and then the violence started again. But this time, violence went too far. He broke her nose. He brought her in hospital. For 7 days she was in hospital. The social services were called. The child was taken into care, and now Natasha's left fighting not only for her sanity, but fighting to get her child back. Because the way that social services viewed it was, you're not protecting the child because you're taking back an abusive partner. Now, Natasha went for 9 months trying to get her child back into her life, which she did eventually, but she had to prove without a shadow of a doubt that this man is out of her life and that she was putting the child first. And she did eventually get back her children, but it was a harrowing ordeal for her, because not only did she have to go through the domestic violence and the police reports and the violent abusive partner, but she had to go through the pain of having her child removed by the social services because of the domestic violence situation. Now, Natasha's story is one of many stories, and you may know a Natasha, you may be the Natasha, or you may know someone just like Natasha that's been going through this. I would say to you, Natasha, if there's a Natasha out there, protect yourself and protect your family. Your partner needs help. No woman should be suffering in silence. Now, Natasha managed to break through from this abusive relationship, but after going through a harrowing ordeal of putting up with one man's violent behavior, and losing her child for 9 months. Get the help, and get the help now. This has been Natasha's story. This has been me, Kevin Treasure, bringing awareness about domestic violence. Thank you.